seek to interrogate under AFA, which is the framework legislation, basically benefit sugar farmers, and sugar factories also benefit, Mr. Speaker, sir, from a framework of privatization that would ensure that the development of cane is a process that will ensure that there's not only cane for the factory, but the sugar cane farmer is also paid in good time. Right now, most farmers in Mumias, in Kisumu County, that is Miwani, in Muhoroni, cane farmers remain unpaid. And it takes a long time for cane farmers to access money from the factories, even after their cane has been harvested. And a policy should be in place to ensure that these poor farmers are compensated, they get money in good time, so that they're able to reinvest the money in farming, Mr. Speaker, sir. That's it.
Make your comment, Senator Samson Chelgei.
Mr. Speaker, two things. Since I come from the region that dependently mostly the sugar, Chemelil, Chemas area, Tindred sub-county, Masab sub-county. Of course, the Masab sub-county is a new area where we are planting sugar now. Mr. Speaker, we have similar problems. In addition, is to add, because I've seen my brother Senator Professor Tom Ojenda, there was a Kenya Privatization Commission. The nucleus of Chemelil, Miwani, and other part of nucleus was supposed to be privatized. And I remember his party leader, and before it comes to the floor of the House, the senator must look at the privatization issue of sugar industry. Because I remember his party leader held a meeting in one of the hotels in exclusion of farmers from Nandi. And that is why we are in High Court in Eldoret, Mr. Speaker, because they wanted to privatize Chemelil Sugar Company, yet part of the nucleus, because part of the nucleus of the sugar within that sector includes Nandi. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to add the issue of privatization of the...
Mr. Speaker, is it really in order, because this was a statement, that we are reducing it to a debate on the floor of the House?
Yeah, I've allowed them to make just comments, 1 or 2 minutes comment. But I nudged the professor because he was explaining a very pertinent matter.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Senate Minority Whip should be listening keenly, because in the statement of Senator Professor Tom Ojenda, he never included an additional issue or privatization of sugar sector. Because Kericho and Nandi, and I think understanding order 53.2, it says the Speaker can allow additional comments. And that is why I'm saying when it comes to the Committee of Agriculture, we should look at the issue of privatization of nucleus that affects the other place, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Kenya Sugar Bill, that is before this House, before Parliament, and I think it is in the Senate, the Sugar Bill. Those are some of the issues we must look at, and in...
There's a minute, moment.
Mr. Speaker, it was ruled in the morning by the Speaker. It was ruled that if the statement, what Senator Chelgei is doing is in order, I just want to support him, because the Speaker ruled that if you are adding information for the purpose of the committee, so I think it's in order.
Proceed and finish up.
Mr. Speaker, in an upshot, I'm just giving additional information. The final information is we need to relook at the sugar bill. I think it is now before the Senate, before the lapse of the last session, because we have running issues. Kericho County, where my brother Aaron Chiruyat, Senator, comes from, Nandi County and Kisumu County, and even Kakamega County and Vihiga. Also, and even Bungoma. We need to relook at that issue because we are stakeholders in this sugar bill. So I want, even as this matter comes before the House, we must look at what the status with the Kenya Privatization Commission happened on the issues of privatizing sugar companies. And we know people who went and brought, Mr. Speaker, individuals from even some areas and wanted to privatize And even, Mr. Speaker, in that privatization, they wanted to give out, for example, Chemelil, without telling us who was taking over to do with what. Yet we wanted that nucleus to remain a sugar belt. Not somebody would have taken the lease and maybe planted potatoes or planted tomatoes, yet it was not the wish of the farmers from the Kisumu. And I'm happy that Senator Professor Tom Agenda, in conclusion, is now facing and holding the bull by the horns. But I'm afraid that the party leader of, your party leader might not be the same page with you. But let us hope for the best in future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Nyutu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I think I rise to support the statement by Professor Tom Agenda, particularly regarding the decline in production of sugar in his county. And Mr. Speaker, personally, I do not come from a sugar growing area. I come from Murang'a. But I rise to support that statement because the issue affecting low production of most agricultural goods, Mr. Speaker, cuts across. And mostly, Mr. Speaker, it's about the cost of production. And this affects not only sugar, but affects also coffee and tea that are major cash crops of Murang'a County, where I come from, Mr. Speaker. And I'm glad that the current regime has promised that it is going to make sure that the cost of production comes down, Mr. Speaker. And I think as the committee addresses that, I think the major thing that we should do is fast track on reduction of production cost, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of cartels in marketing of agricultural commodities must also be addressed as we look at the low production, Mr. Speaker, because I think farmers are demotivated because of the low prices or the low yield, the low income that they continue receiving from agricultural products, Mr. Speaker. I remember sometimes last month in Murang'a, we had some professionals that was taking us through and telling us why the farmer was not benefiting from his sweat. And we got very shocked, Mr. Speaker, that some companies have registered as coffee marketers using one name. Then they take another name, they register another company. The same people register another company as a buying company, Mr. Speaker. And so the seller becomes the buyer. And so the price, Mr. Speaker, is compromised. I do not know whether that is the same thing that is happening with sugar, but I think as the committee looks at that, I think that is something that they may want to know whether the same thing happening, where somebody converts themselves into a seller and converts themselves again into a buyer using another company, Mr. Speaker. And I think as that issue is looked at, let us see that the cartels are also arrested, Mr. Speaker, so that the farmers of sugar, coffee, tea, milk can gain from their sweat, Mr. Speaker. And so I support especially the issue of low production of farmers of sugar in Kisumu and farmers everywhere, because it cuts across, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Catherine Mumu. It's okay now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this. I rise to support the statement by Professor Tom Agenda, who is my senator from Kisumu. And Mr. Speaker, even as I support, I would want to urge that the committee that will look at this issue should for once depoliticize the addressing of problems of farmers in the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, sugar farmers in this country, whether they are from Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Kakamega, Busia, Bungoma, Nandi, are all suffering because we have politicized the management of the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, the parastatals around the sugar factories actually collapsed. Most of these sugar factories are leased to private actors, and those private actors are not better than what the parastatals were. Mr. Speaker, every time we stand as politicians to speak about the sugar industry, we speak at each other. I can see the statement is asking the governor to give some answers, answers that the governor might not have. Because as you know, the sugar industries, Mumias, Nzoia, Busia, were in the hands of the national government. And by the time devolution came, most of those sugar factories had actually collapsed. What we have not done properly is to find out what the Kenya Sugar Research Foundation found out on the viability of farming sugarcane in the manner that we do in Kenya. We have not done that. We politically cheer on farmers to proceed and plant sugarcane in acreages that are not viable. So they are we assume they're going to make profit when they know they're not going to make profit, because it is not politically correct to tell them that they may not make profit. We have not put enough funds in the research to be able to design our sugarcane farming in a manner that it can be profitable, like in the countries in Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, we must stop the political blame game across politicians who don't know how to farm. In fact, who farm as telephone farmers and cut the queue and get paid anyways because they're politicians. But we have farmers who are suffering. I suggest that committee should take this issue seriously